Recording started.
All right, so we're just going to roll now, and we're just going to go through what we've got on the screen. You can see those three cute dogs there. I don't even know what kind they are. But I'm just going to read it through some of the stuff, and then I'm going to ask you guys some of the questions, okay? So there's questions in blue, and I'll just ask you guys the questions after we kind of go through some of the stuff. So we went through two different kind of selections, right? And you remember they were artificial selection and natural selection. And so natural selection, nature selects who's going to live and who's going to die, right? And it's based on whichever creatures are best adapted to their environment. Now, artificial selection, it's not nature that does the selecting, it's humans that select. And the types of creatures they select are ones that have desirable traits and ones that benefit humans. Okay, so if you've got a cow with high milk production, then that's going to be a desirable trait that you're going to select for in artificial selection. So remember, with artificial selection, because it's artificial, there's a few problems that come along with it. And one of them is that the variability is going to go down. I'm just going to get my little pointer out here. Okay, so variability is going to go down in a population. And the reason is when all the creatures are similar, variability goes down, right? Variability has to do with creatures being different. And the problem with that then is that if there's a change in the population, or rather the conditions, like the environment, so for instance, if it becomes colder or if you get a disease, then you don't have the variability there. And since all creatures are the same, if one of them is wiped out, they're all wiped out. So that's one problem with natural selection, right? And now, another name you can have for natural selection is artificial breeding, and you can also call it selective breeding. So what we'll do right now is we'll just go over some different questions that relate to this stuff. So the first question, 1A, and so I'm going to ask you guys to answer these. First question, 1A, is what are two different ways of describing the types of traits that are selected during artificial selection? So what kind of things are they looking for? Or how would you describe what traits are being selected during artificial selection? What do you guys think? Okay, benefits people, good, that's one. And what's another way of describing it? Oh, good. Okay, so you can hear me perfectly now, Maddie? Right on, that's awesome. So if you just want to go over the recording later on, you can just kind of go over the stuff we were talking about earlier. So what I'm just asking about is the two different ways of describing the types of traits that are selected during artificial selection. And so far, Austin said they benefit people. So that's one way of describing how we select the traits that we select for artificial selection. Can you guys think of another way of describing how we select traits for artificial selection? They benefit humans. What else? Do we select any old traits? Okay, if we have a look at this section, guys, so they benefit humans, you can see that up here. They're also desirable traits, right? That's another way we can describe them, right? High milk production, that's something that's really desirable. Okay, so those are two different ways of describing artificial selection. Desirable traits, and they benefit humans. Okay, now let's look at question 1B. It says, why is artificial selection a problem for a population? So what do you think? Okay, so why is artificial selection a problem for a population? And think about if you get a change in the environment, what's going to happen if you have artificial selection? Okay, everybody's going to get wiped out if you got a cold spell all of a sudden, or they could get wiped out, right? We can't say that for sure, but they could if you got a disease. And why is that? Why is everybody going to get wiped out if artificial selection happens? Yeah. They can adapt, and it's because they don't have enough variability, right? They're all the same. Okay? You guys got the right idea. Okay, so what are two other names for artificial selection? What else can we call it? Mass extinction. Okay, mass extinction is a little bit different. Okay, I understand what you're saying. You're saying if everybody's wiped out. Right now we're not talking about the wiping out part. We're just talking about the artificial selection. Okay? So if it's artificial selection, it could be artificial breeding or it could be selective breeding. Okay, you guys got it. So there's 3 different ways we can describe it. All right, so we got this question. Good stuff. And we're just going to boogie on to the next one. So screen number 2. And this talks about symbiotic relationships. Now, some people, when they hear about symbiotic relationships, they think they're the same thing as mutualism. When we talk about mutualism, some people think those are the same things, but we'll actually see that there's 3 different types of symbiotic relationships. And a symbiotic relationship is just a relationship where 2 creatures live in a close relationship with one another. But there's 3 different ways of having symbiotic relationships. The first one is mutualism, and that's where both of the organisms benefit. Okay, so we could draw a little happy sign here on the board if we wanted to, right? Okay, if you think about the term, the feeling's mutual, you know, like somebody says something nice to you or something like that, and you say, hey, the feeling's mutual, right? It means I feel the same way. And so if both organisms are benefiting, that's mutualism, okay? And now, all right, there we go. You get to use one of the other symbols in a sec here. Now the other situation we can have, which is another type of symbiotic relationship, is commensalism, and that's where one of the creatures benefits and the other one doesn't, but the one that doesn't benefit is not harmed. Okay? And that's commensalism. And then the third one, parasitism, is when one creature benefits and the other one is harmed. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Maddie can correct me if I'm wrong about this. Oh, I think Mitchell just joined. Is that right? Sometimes I can't tell if a change happens on the board, but did you just come on, Mitchell? All right, great to have you, Mitchell. So what we're doing, Mitchell, we're just going over a question here that has to do with symbiotic relationships, and we're just talking about the 3 different types. The first type is mutualism, where both organisms benefit. The second is commensalism, where one benefits and the other doesn't benefit, but it's not harmed. And the third is parasitism. One benefits, the other is harmed. I was just going to ask Maddie, when we had our camp out, we had this really cool game. I can't even remember what it was called. She might remember. But some of us were like, some people were predators, and, well, it wasn't predators. It was more like herbivores and carnivores. And I got to be, I think I was disease, wasn't I? Or, I can't even remember. Anyways, I think we had some sort of parasites in that game, didn't we, or something like that? I was the poacher, that's right, I was the poacher. I just said, bang, you're dead, sort of thing. And anyways, it was a really fun game. I've never played it before. But I think some people might have been parasites or something like that. So anyways, so question, guys, is can you think of an example of each type of parasite? Or, sorry, so you've played it before, eh, Austin? Pretty cool game, eh? Can you guys think of an example, though, of each type of symbiotic relationship? So mutualism, for example. Both organisms benefit. Can you think of an example in the animal kingdom or any kind of kingdom? Sharks and fish, okay. So, yeah, that's right. Certain types of sharks, fish will feed off them and clean them, right? And so the shark benefits and so does the fish. Rhino and a bird. Okay. So what happens with the rhino and the bird? Okay. Bear kills something, doesn't need it, then a wolf can benefit. That's true. Okay, so Austin, you said a bug on a rhino. Okay, so the bird is cleaning off the bugs on a rhino? All right, so you have a lot of situations where one creature will clean another creature, and that benefits the creature, right? And the creature's not harming it when it cleans it. Lice and us. Okay, so lice and us. I'd have to say that might be an example. Let's save that one for now, okay? Because I'm not sure we benefit from that I can think of. So you guys have some good examples of mutualism. Okay, so commensalism, where's a situation where one benefits and the other one is not harmed? The other one doesn't benefit, but it's not harmed. Can you guys think of an example of commensalism? Okay, a bird in a tree, that's right. The bird doesn't really benefit the tree at all. At least I can't think of any examples. So that would be commensalism. Good stuff. How about parasitism? That one we should be able to think of a few. How about, I think Brad's might apply there, hey? Lice? My kids have had lice before, and it's not a lot of fun. You have to get rid of, put everything in bags, put it outside. Tapeworm, yeah, it's a good one. Fox and deer, okay. Now, generally, when we're talking about parasitism, most of the time, the creature's not killed. But I'm trying to think whether or not that could be an example if the creature is actually killed. Okay, barnacles on a whale for commensalism. Good. All right. I think you guys understand this stuff well. I think we'll move on to the next one. So that was question 2, and I think somebody made a happy face on me. All right. So this one's talking about resource partitioning compared to a niche. Now, resource partitioning, it's kind of cool stuff. Because this situation here, okay, first of all, let's look at a definition. A resource is something that, like food or a place to live, right? That's what we think of when you think of a resource. And to partition, if you think of partitioning something, it's dividing it up. Maybe you guys have heard of partitioning a hard drive. You know, that's dividing it up sort of thing. So resource partitioning is dividing up a resource, such as a tree, between a number of similar species. Okay, it's always similar species of creatures. And so if you look at the type of birds called warblers, you can see there's different types of warblers. They're always known to be found living at a particular height in the tree. So these warblers are always found at an exact height, or pretty much exact height. And that's pretty cool when you think about it, that, you know, like the Cape May warbler in the upper right-hand corner, that one's always found in the kind of upper right-hand corner of the tree. And you look at this bay-breasted warbler, it's always the lower part of the tree on the left-hand side. So, well, maybe not the left-hand side, but a certain height, right? Okay, so that's what resource partitioning is. You know, the tree is the resource, and it's being partitioned or divided up between a similar species. You know, they're all warblers, but the exact species is like black-throated warbler or whatever. And so we're dividing it up so that we can use it, and it's kind of cool that all these different birds, all these warblers can be on one tree at the same time because they're making use of the different specific areas of the tree. You know, one area might be warmer or has different kind of seeds or whatever. Okay, so that's resource partitioning, and a niche is kind of a similar but different idea. So the niche for a creature is really the role that it plays in its environment, and so where it lives and what it eats, those are some different aspects of the niche. But also the role it plays in terms of, you know, who it eats and who eats it. All those different things come into play in terms of what's the niche for a creature. Okay? So if we look at the question on the next screen, it just says explain the difference between resource partitioning and a niche. So what would you say the difference is?
You have new mail.
Okay, I'll just go back a page just a sec here. Okay, so here's resource partitioning. Just let you read that a little bit. And then the niche. Yeah, they are cool. So what do you think is the difference between the two? Okay, so we're talking about the difference between resource partitioning, okay, that's dividing up a resource. Good answer, Maddie. And how about a niche? What is that again? If you were to look at like kind of the main word that describes what a niche is, what is the main word we're looking for? Okay, it's where it lives, what it eats, and overall, okay, any other ideas? what it does in its environment. It's the role that it plays, right? And all these things kind of come into the role that it plays. Okay, so that's kind of the difference. You can see some similarities though, right, between the two. All right, so we're going to talk now about the difference between sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. So we know that basically sexual is when you have two parents involved. Asexual, there's no parents involved. Now we're going to look at the different pros and cons between the two, okay? So some of the benefits of sexual reproduction is, well, the main benefit really is that having two parents means that the kids are different from their parents. And this kind of relates to some stuff we talked before about with variation. And it means if the environment changes, someone in the population will likely have the traits that they need to survive. There's going to be at least somebody because everybody's so different, right? Now, what are some of the drawbacks of sexual reproduction? Well, it takes time and energy. You think about a peacock, you know, you've got these big feathers and stuff like that, trying to attract a mate and all that. So another disadvantage as well is that few organisms are produced, right? So if one of them dies, it's kind of like nobody's there to carry on the family sort of thing. With asexual reproduction, it's kind of the flip side. Everything that's a pro for sexual reproduction is a con, and vice versa. So for asexual reproduction, we have large numbers being produced. You know, you think about bacteria, in 20 minutes you can produce like millions of them. It takes only a little bit of time and energy. And as far as the downside, same idea we looked at before. All creatures are similar, so if the environment changes, all of them might be wiped out. And so that's a good thing too, you know, with you're talking about, you know, what do you call that stuff? You know, medications that wipe out bacteria, antibiotics and that kind of thing. You know, you're trying to wipe them out, and then the bacteria are always fighting, and they're mutating and that sort of stuff. And so it's kind of a constant battle, kind of like, it makes me think about police with radar detectors, or you know, people in the car have radar detectors, and then police have better radar. They're always kind of, you know, improving at the same time. Okay, so looking at this then, what's one pro and one con for sexual reproduction? Okay, better chance of surviving, that's good, that's a pro. Color of skin. Pro is they're all different. Cons, it takes time and energy, right? So that's the thing about sexual reproduction, takes time and energy. That's right, so that's a con. All right, part B, what's one pro and one con for asexual reproduction? That's all right. One pro and one con for asexual reproduction. Okay, pro, it takes less energy. Good. What's the downside, disadvantage? Asexual reproduction. Okay, lots and lots of offspring, that's another pro. Con, they can all be wiped out if the environment changes. Harder to survive, that's right. You guys have the idea, good stuff. So, alright, now, how does sexual reproduction increase variability? So it's asking how. How does that happen with sexual reproduction, that you get more variability? Why do you get more variability with sexual reproduction? Two different genes, because their offspring are all different. That's right. Their offspring are different because who's different? Their parents are different, right? And that's why, like Austin was saying, that's why their genes are different. Good. Genes in your body can be transferred, so your parents transfer genes to your body. Good stuff. All right. I think you guys get this. So now we're going to talk about mitosis and meiosis. And so both these M words, right? They both take place in multi-celled organisms. So that's another way you can remember it too, right? You got another M there. Mitosis, meiosis, multi-cell. Okay, so these processes take place in multi-celled creatures. And let's look at the difference here. So mitosis takes place in all cells in an organism. You just pick any one of your cells and it's going to do mitosis. Why does it do mitosis? Because it needs to grow. You know, it needs to keep reproducing. Your cells keep dividing and growing over again, right? And also you get cell repair. And, excuse me, if you ever take like grade 12 biology, you learn that our bodies are designed so there's only a certain number of times our cells can divide. And that's why we only live to like, 120 or 30 years old, because our bodies kind of are programmed that they only divide so many times. Okay, so mitosis is for growth and cell repair, whereas meiosis, it takes place only in the sex cells, and the purpose is for sexual reproduction. Okay, so we have different, where it takes place is different, and the type, the purpose for it is different as well. Growth and cell repair as opposed to sexual reproduction. Okay, so now let's look at how the parent cells compare to the daughter cells. We'll see that with one of these, they're the same, the parent cells and daughter cells. With the other one, they're different. So let's see which is which. Okay, so with mitosis, the parent cells and daughter cells are identical, absolutely identical. And we want them to be identical, right? Because we want our body to look the same. We don't want to be changing all the time. And with meiosis, the daughter cells have half as much DNA as the parent cells. Okay? And the reason is because you're going to take the male cell and the female cell that are half, and when you put them together, now you've got a regular cell again, right? So meiosis produces sex cells, which are also known as gametes, and the gametes from the mom joins with the gametes from the dad to produce a new organism. All right. You guys know this. So go on to the next page, and we'll check out what do we got here. We've got a diagram, okay. So let's look at meiosis. We said that we've got, okay, first of all, we'll look at mitosis. We've got the same cell, the daughter cell is the same as the parent cell, right? So if we look at this, I'm just going to get the pointer out here. You look at this cell, you can see that we've got the same amount of DNA, right, with mitosis, by the time the process is done. But with meiosis, it's different. You've got half the amount of DNA, okay? So I just put a little summary there. Meiosis produces sex cells that have half as much DNA as the parent cells. Two sex cells, one from each parent, join to produce a regular cell. This is during sexual reproduction. Mitosis produces cells that have the same amount of DNA as the parent cell. This is during growth and cell repair. Okay, so you can just see a little picture of what's going on. All right. So, question now. States two differences between mitosis and meiosis, and one of the differences is going to be, so the first difference is A, the purposes of the two processes. Okay, what's the smiley? What's the smiley about here, Brad? I didn't catch something here. All right. Okay, maybe just hold off on those for now, okay, please? Thanks. All right, so the first difference, guys, is between the purposes of the two processes. So what's the difference between meiosis and mitosis in terms of their purpose? And the second difference is the amount of DNA. But let's focus on the purpose first.
You have new mail.
What's the difference in their purpose? Okay, so what's the purpose of mitosis again? Repair and to make suspense. No problem. Just repair. Okay. And the other one is growth, like Mitchell says. Good stuff. So cell repair and cell growth, that's mitosis. And what was it for meiosis, guys? Make new organisms. Perfect. Okay, so that's the difference in their purpose. Yeah, I know. I'm sure that must hurt. Hopefully it feels better soon. So, now what's the difference in the amount of DNA with mitosis and meiosis? How do we compare them? How does the DNA with the parent cell and daughter cell, what does it look like with mitosis? How do we describe the amount of DNA with the parent cell and daughter cell in mitosis. Okay, so a daughter has half as much as the mother. Now, Maddie, is that mitosis or meiosis? That's right. Okay, so the daughter cell has half as much in meiosis, and how would we describe how they compare in mitosis? Daughter cells and parent cells? They're identical, right? Same amount of DNA. Good stuff. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Now this one here is going to talk about the 5 kingdoms. And we haven't really talked about exactly what the 5 kingdoms are. You see, some of them probably aren't that familiar. You see the one that says Monera? Monera is basically blue-green algae. Okay? And proto, I don't even know how to pronounce it, protista or whatever. Normally in science you just call those protists. And if you're talking about things like, you guys would probably remember paramecium and amoebas from earlier science. You guys remember those things? Those are protists. Yeah, Protostica. Good. All right, so those are the 5 kingdoms, I should say. All right? So any creature in the world is going to be one of those 5 kingdoms. Most things we think of are either plants or animals, but of course there's fungi as well. I don't know if you guys like mushrooms, but my kids hate mushrooms. My wife and I love them. And yeah, they're a type of fungi, right? So yeah, I find a lot of people, they either love mushrooms or they hate them. You like them too? Like them on pizza? So the kingdoms, the 5 kingdoms, right, they're broken down into phylums. Yeah, fried mushrooms, ooh, getting better. You guys are making me hungry. All right, so we got kingdoms broken into phylums, and those are broken into classes, those are broken into orders. So kingdoms, there's a whole lot of creatures in one kingdom, right? Like there's a whole lot of plants out there, there's a whole lot of animals out there. So kingdoms are not very specific, but you get more specific as you go along. So when you go down from kingdoms to phylums to class to orders, it gets more and more specific. All right, awesome, you get an apple then. Okay, so we're getting more specific, right guys? And this is just something I came up with. King Philip can only find giant spiders. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You might find another one that's better out there. But basically it helps you remember that we start with kingdom, which is not very specific. We get to phylum. The P stands for phylum. That's a little more specific, and you go all the way down to species, which is the most specific, right? Okay? So that's all that helps you to remember. King Philip can only find giant spiders. And one of these days I'll have to tell you about some of my adventures with spiders and my sisters. Didn't make them too happy, but anyways. Okay, so now this, yeah. The scientific name for any creature on Earth is always genus and species, right? That's any creature on Earth is identified by its genus name followed by its species name. So Homo sapiens, right, that's the name for humans. So Homo is the genus part and sapiens is the species part. Okay, I think the next question is going to be a pretty easy one. So the question here, what is the genus and what is the species name for Micropterus salmoides? So Micropterus salmoides. So what is the genus and what is the species? Oh, by the way, I'm not sure when Keanu joined us, but hey, welcome to the class. Have you been here for a few minutes? Okay. Yeah, great to have you. Sometimes I just don't notice some of the things that are going on the screen, but yeah, good to have you. So guys, what is the genus and what is the species for Micropterus salmoides? Which part of the name is the genus and which part is the species? Okay, so it's largemouth bass. That's its regular name, right? That's not its scientific name. If we look at its scientific name, which part is the genus and which is the species? So which one of these two is the genus and which is the species? If we compare it to Homo sapiens for humans, is Micropterus going to be the genus or is that going to be the species? Okay, so Salmoides is the genus. Okay, it's actually the second one that's that's going to be the species. So Micropterus is actually the genus, and then Salmoides is the species. No problems. Okay, so you guys see how that works now? First one's genus, second one's species. Okay, so I think we'll just go over that one. It's pretty straightforward. So what we're going to talk about now is we're going to talk about biodiversity. And all biodiversity means is just another word for biological diversity. Okay? And it's kind of another word for variation too. If there's a lot of variation out there on planet Earth, you have a lot of biological diversity. Or if you have a lot in Alberta, for instance, or whatever, or if you're talking about like a specific ecosystem like a pond, that's a lot of biodiversity or a lot of variation. Okay, so basically the more creatures that exist and the greater the number of types of creatures that exist, that'll be the more biological diversity. So if you're looking at like rainforests, those things, as you know, are just teeming with biodiversity, right? Like they say that, I forget what percentage of all the beetles that are found on Earth are found in the rainforest. It's a large number, huge number. And you see tons of different plants there that you never see here because it's so warm. So, okay, so when you look at a loss of biodiversity, you're looking at basically a loss of variation. When you have less variation in an area, you have less biodiversity. And any time any creature dies, is wiped out completely in an area, you have less biodiversity, right? So if you're talking about a creature being wiped out in a local area or on the whole Earth, all those things are going to decrease biodiversity. All right? So the question here is, name one factor that increases biodiversity. So what would be one factor that would increase it? Okay, so Brad, what's biodiversity another name for? What's another way we could describe biodiversity? What does diversity mean? Okay. You know, we talk about diversity in Canada, we're talking about, you know, people of all different ethnic groups, that sort of thing. Okay, so Maddie, you wrote, Mitchell wrote extirpation, extinction. Okay, let's save that for the second part. For this part here, for the first part, what increases biodiversity? Okay, let's just leave stuff off the board there, okay? If you don't mind, just, yeah. All right, so Maddie wrote here, if you get a lot of water, it will increase the amount of trees for the beetles. And if it goes dry, we start to lose trees, and we start to lose beetles. That's right. Okay, and what I was thinking of as well, guys, is a factor that increases biodiversity is basically variation, right? The more variation you have in the area, the more biodiversity, right? And like Maddie was saying as well, if you're going to increase the amount of food for one creature, that's going to increase their diversity, you could say, right? Okay, so basically variation is going to increase biodiversity, and what Mitchell said, two things that are going to decrease biodiversity, that's the second part of the question, extirpation and extinction. Now, can anyone tell me what extirpation is? Okay. Whole species dies in one area. That's right. So if it's one area, then it's extirpation. Whereas what is extinction? Okay, so extirpation, you know, certain creatures die in Alberta. That's extirpation. And you're right, if it dies from the whole Earth, that's extinction, right? So any one of those situations decreases biodiversity. All right, so we got it. So let's go on to the next one then. All right. Yeah, I'd really appreciate it if we could stop doing that drawing on the board here. Okay, guys? Whoever it is. All right, so the next one, we're going to talk about specialists. Now, normally when we think about a specialist, we think about a doctor, right? I don't know if you guys have ever watched a show called Mystery Diagnosis. It's a really cool show. And anyways, yeah, it's a good show, right? And on that show, what I find happens is these people have these really weird diseases. They go to all these different doctors, and they're not able to get help. And finally, they go to Dr. Jones or whatever, and Dr. Jones is able to help them. And finally, they're able to get some relief. And you always know on the show, as soon as you see the doctor where they actually show the name on the screen, then you know that's the one who's going to be able to help them. And so it's a pretty cool show. My wife and I like it, and my wife, she's a nurse, so she likes it as well, of course. But anyways, so when you're talking in nature, it's one thing to be a specialist, but if you're over-specialized, that's a bad thing, right? And so when we talk about the special needs of creatures, if you have special needs in terms of what kind of foods you like or where you can live, maybe you can only live in a really specific area, that can be a problem, right? Well, that's cool, Mitchell. Your dad's a doctor, eh? So, yeah, so with some kind of creatures, like a panda bear, for instance, they're over-specialized. The needs that they have in their environment are so special that if their food supply disappears, then they're in trouble. So can you guys remember from the lessons we talked about specifically what it was for panda bears in China? Why they're over-specialized? Why are they over-specialized? What is it about them that makes them over-specialized? And why this is a problem for them, the fact that they're over-specialized? Do you guys remember what it is? Might even be able to figure out from the picture there. Okay, so there's too much of them, not enough bamboo. That's right. So they're really specialized. They can only eat bamboo. If the bamboo supply dries up, they're in trouble, right? Yeah, they're big and the bamboo's small. That's true. Okay, so you know, if the bamboo supply dries up, then they could be wiped out, and so they're one of the endangered species. And now this other question I had here, I meant to put it in blue, I think, and I said the relic leopard frog can only live in specific areas. There are 2 small locations where populations of the frog remain. This species is suffering from, and I think maybe I was looking for a blank there. So what would you call that? The condition, if you want, of leopard frogs. It's the basic thing we're looking at in this question. What science term do we use for that? The situation that leopard frogs find themselves in. In swamps, eh? Okay. What I was looking at was over-specialization. Okay, that's the condition, that's the problem. Okay? Yeah, we went to a campground once, and there were frogs there, and all the kids in the campground were walking through our campground to get to the frogs. So it was pretty cool that year. This was around Lake Wabamun? No, not Lake Wabamun. What am I thinking? Can't remember what it's called. Anyways, lake nearby, and anyways, there were tons of frogs, and everybody was going through our campsite. It was pretty cool. But this year when we went, there weren't any frogs at all. Last year was plus 30. It was a May long weekend, and Last year was plus 30, and this year was, it snowed the day after, so big change. So anyways, okay, we're going to talk about, you guys had a frog, eh? Frogs are pretty cool. And, yeah, I've never had a pet frog. My daughter just got a fish, though. Yeah, my daughter loves her fish. She carries it everywhere. Takes her for walks. Okay, guys, so what we're going to talk about now, we're going to talk about biotechnology, right? And so you think about what bio means, right? Bio means living, technology, right? That's pretty obvious, right? So biotechnology is using technology to make changes in living creatures, right? And so there's a number of different things we looked at as far as biotechnology. I put them here in bold text here: cloning, in vitro fertilization, artificial insemination, and genetic engineering. So those are all forms of biotechnology. What we're going to look at here, we're going to look at some differences and similarities between these different forms of biotechnology. So I'm sure you guys are probably fascinated by some of these too. Cloning is when you use the DNA of an organism to create an absolutely identical organism. And some of you guys might have heard, Clone Wars. You might have heard at some point there was, this was done in Britain. It was called Dolly the sheep. And they cloned Dolly and made a sheep that looked absolutely identical to her. And if you look on the internet, if you Google Dolly the sheep, you can see it. They look the same. And you know, there's some controversy, of course, you know, with cloning humans and that kind of stuff. But that's cloning, basically using the DNA of one organism to create an identical one. And if you think about what we were talking about with artificial breeding before, you can see there's some problems with cloning, right? You don't want to be cloned, yeah. Well, the thing about cloning is, why wouldn't you want to be cloned? Well, yeah, you know, everybody's identical. Same deal as we looked at before, right? So if somebody's wiped out, everybody's wiped out. Okay? Now, I'm just going to skip to, no, I'm not going to skip to that. I'm just going to go on to in vitro fertilization. So in vitro fertilization, the word in vitro basically means out of the living creature. So it's in a test tube. Yeah. So in vitro fertilization, sometimes, you know, parents can't have kids, and they might have, you know, fertilization in a test tube. So the egg and the sperm meet in a test tube. Right? That's in vitro, out of the living thing. That's what in vitro means. Artificial insemination is a little bit different. You know, let's say you got a prize bull, so you take the sperm, the semen from the bull, and you put it into the cow, right? So it's a little different. Artificial insemination, right? Now, genetic engineering. That's the example we've got here with the little, you can see this is a plant, right? But you know where the genes came from for this plant? Where do you guys think the genes came from for this plant? Any ideas, guys? From a seed. Okay, but they took some genes from another type of creature. It wasn't even a plant. What do you think it was? Well, they actually took genes. It was a firefly, and I'm not sure if you can read it. Maybe Mitchell saw what I wrote underneath. I said, this is a plant which has been genetically engineered with the genes from a firefly. Okay, so they actually took the genes from a firefly and they put it in a plant. Now, is that freaky or what, eh? To get a plant that actually glows in the dark? Would you like to have one of those in your room? Okay, so what are they doing? They're taking the DNA from one creature, putting it into another creature. And then that creature grows with the DNA of the other creature. It kind of takes its program and incorporates it into its program, the program from the other creature. Okay, so why do they use genetic engineering? For medicinal purposes, industrial purposes, agricultural purposes, right? Like you guys have probably heard of genetically modified beef, or you've heard of you know, corn. That's genetic engineering, right? It would be pretty cool to have something like this, wouldn't it? All right, so now what I want you guys to do is to think about these different. I just want you to take just a second again to look over the different definitions here, okay? For cloning, in vitro fertilization, artificial insemination, and genetic engineering. Okay, look at the differences between them, look at the similarities between them. And then we're going to go to our question. Alright, I hope I didn't move too fast. But, okay, so explain how in vitro fertilization and artificial insemination are similar but different. Can somebody tell us how those two are similar but different? Okay, so in vitro fertilization and artificial insemination. How are they similar and different? Okay, you're still using semen, but one is being inserted directly and the other is artificial. Okay, that's right. So which is which? So which is the artificial insemination? Is it the one you're inserting the semen? Or is it the other one? Okay, yeah, so artificial insemination, you're taking semen from one creature, putting it into, from a cow, or from a bull, I should say, putting it into a cow, okay? And in vitro fertilization, both of them are taking place outside the body, right? They're both taking place inside a test tube. So they're kind of similar, but they're different, right? Okay, how about cloning and genetic engineering? How would you say they're similar but different? What do they both involve? What kind of substance do they both involve? Okay, what kind of substance? They both involve DNA, right? And what is cloning again, guys? What's the definition for cloning? They're going to look the same. Yeah. Who can give me a definition for cloning? Using DNA of one organism to create another that's alike. Good. So that's cloning. And what's the definition for genetic engineering? Think of the example of the plant. What are we doing there? They both involve DNA. What are we doing with DNA with, okay. So Maddie says taking DNA from one organism to another to make medicinal, industrial, agricultural products. Mitchell says taking DNA from one organism and put it in the other organism to give, yeah, I got you there, to give it their traits. Yep, you guys both have the right idea. Okay? That's right. That's an example as well of taking DNA from one organism, putting it into another. Good stuff. So again, you can see they're similar and different, eh? And that's all what science is about, eh? So much of it, eh? Is looking for similarities and differences. All right. So we're going to talk about now about, we talked earlier about biodiversity, right? And we're going to talk about two different steps that humans can take to increase biodiversity, or you could say protect biodiversity, right? And so the first one is the creation of what are known as protected areas, and the second one is restoration of ecosystems and species. So, so Banff National Park and Ducks Unlimited are two different steps that humans are taking to preserve biodiversity. And the question I have for you guys is, which represents which? Do you think which one of those two, between Banff National Park and Ducks Unlimited, represents the creation of a protected area, and which represents the restoration of ecosystems and species? Let's start with the first one. Which one do you think represents the creation of a protected area? Okay. Now by A, Maddie, do you mean, I'm asking, between Banff National Park and Ducks Unlimited, which of those two represents the creation of a protected area? Okay, Banff National Park. Good, that's the right answer. And why is Banff a protected area? In what ways does it represent a protected area? No hunting, exactly, good one. Man-made fence, protection, good. All right, and so obviously if that's the protected area, then Ducks Unlimited is the restoration of ecosystems and species. Yeah, it doesn't make the hunters happy, does it? So Ducks Unlimited, basically what they do is they take areas like marshlands that have been destroyed because sometimes, you know, companies are draining the marsh behind them and stuff like that, and they're restoring them. They're restoring the way the ecosystem is for the animals so that they're going to be able to live there better. So I guess it sounds like at Maddie's place it's fair game for the hunters, eh? Okay, Giano, you're asking when this ends, eh? It normally does take about an hour, and let me just see how many more screens we have to go. Okay, I'm going to try to whip through the next one pretty quickly, okay, because I do want to be able to finish up. I think we just got started about 10 minutes late, and that's why we're running just a little bit behind, okay? So, okay, so we got that answer here. Now, let's just go through population versus community. Okay, so what was the question? You're asking on the last one, Maddie? So the question was, what type of step was, so we said that humans, so we said Banff National Park and Ducks Unlimited represent steps people have taken to preserve biodiversity. So the question was, what type of step was Banff National Park and Ducks Unlimited represent? And then I said C, A, and B. So A and B were creation of protected areas, and B was restoration of ecosystems and species. Okay, so we're talking about populations and community. Good stuff. So they're similar ideas, right? A population is a group of the exact same species of organism living in the same area. A community is a group of more than one species of organism. Now the trick is sometimes a community can be similar creatures, but just a little bit different. So if you were talking about, okay, so here's the question. Now that we know the definitions, if you're talking about a group of lions living in the African grasslands, would that be a population or a community? Okay, it's actually going to be a population, and the reason is because it's all one species, all lions, okay? And community is a group of more than one type of species. So for answer B, yeah, okay. So you get it now though, right? So if it's lions, tigers, and panthers, they're kind of similar creatures, but they're different, right? So they're a community, okay? All right, no probs. You tell him, Maddie. Just kidding. Okay, so now we're going to talk about discrete versus continuous. All right. So
You have new mail.
discrete traits, we're talking about things like, you know, you either have a tail or you don't have a tail. All right, that's discrete. Whereas if you're talking about continuous traits, you're talking about something like height. You don't say someone has height or they don't have height. You say this person's 5'4", like my wife, or I'm 5'9", or like my sister-in-law, she's 5'1", and her husband's 6'5". So, all right, easy there, guys. No hunting on the whiteboard. Okay, so continuous traits are a little bit different. They're a range of different possibilities, right? Okay, so discrete traits are either or. You have a tail, you don't have a tail. Continuous traits, you don't have it's not like you have a height or you don't have a height, you have a range of possible heights. Okay, so here's a question here. True or false, the weight of a bird is a discrete trait? Okay, so that's false, right? the weight of a bird is a continuous trait. You can have all different weights. All right, we're done that one. Let's go to the next one. Okay, now we're getting into stuff that's a little bit more complicated, so you got to pay attention here, okay? All right, so dominant versus recessive traits. So we're assuming here the long hair is dominant in some creature to short hair, right? So some creatures that's the case, right? Okay, so we're going to say capital L stands for long hair. Why do we choose capital L? Because it's the dominant trait. We're saying it's going to be dominant over short hair. And so that's why we've got a small L for dominant, for short hair. Now here's the cross between the parents, okay? So let's say we've got 2 long hair, 2 big L's, crossed with 2 short hairs. Now what are the kids going to look like? Well, it doesn't matter. You always get a big L from one parent, small L from the other, so you always get big L, little l. But since they're dominant traits, what are the kids going to look like? Are they going to have long hair or short hair? Okay. So what kind of hair are the kids going to have? Okay, they're not going to have medium hair here because the reason is we're saying that long hair is dominant over recessive, or we're saying long hair is dominant over short hair. So what that means is even though they're going to get big L, little l genes, they're all going to be long hair because the one trait is dominant over the other. Okay? So, now the thing is, guys, so those are dominant and recessive traits, right? And it doesn't always work that way in genetics. As you learn more about genetics, you learn that it doesn't always work that way. But here's the deal, guys, is the parents in both these situations are both called purebreds. Okay, so this here is a one kind of purebred, 2 big L's. This is another purebred, 2 little l's, right? But this is not a purebred, big L, little l. Do you guys remember what that is? That's not a purebred. What is it? Crossbreed or hybrid. Good. Those are both right answers, okay? So that's what a hybrid is. It has different genes from both parents. Purebred has the same, okay? And do you remember what those little letters are called? Either the big L or the little l? What are those letters called? The one gene that you get from each parent. What do you call those? Okay, guys, what do you call these? Big L or little l? What do you call those things? Okay, you can call them genes, but they're called alleles. Okay, so each one of those letters is an allele, right? Good stuff. All right, so you're getting a different allele from each parent. Okay, so I just wrote in the red text here. Okay, how do you spell it? It's right over here. A-L-L-E-L-E-S, alleles. Okay? So when you cross 2 purebred parents like we did here, what do you get? You get hybrid kids, as long as the parents are different, right? If you had 2 big L's crossed with each other, then the parents are going to be the same. But as long as you got 2 hybrid parents, or 2 purebred parents, I should say, that are the same, I mean that are different, that's what I mean, then you get hybrid children. Yeah, I mean, the terms we use, I guess, are a little different sometimes for people, you know, but yeah. All right. So I think we covered that kind of stuff, and let's look at this question here. So the question is, explain the difference between an organism that has purebred genes with one that has hybrid genes. So what's the difference between those two? What's the difference between the terms purebred and hybrid? Which one of them means you have the same genes? Is it purebred or hybrid? One is going to be black, and hybrid you can be pink, purple, green. Haha. Okay, hybrid, two different parents, right? Two different genes. So if you got big L, little l, that's hybrid, right? Two big L's, that's purebred. Okay, so question for you guys. If you cross two purebreds, big B, two big B's times two little b's, what will the kids have? What genes are the kids going to have? Big B, little b, that's right. And we're going to call that kid a purebred or hybrid. All right, that's a hybrid. Okay, so what are alleles again, guys? That's question C. What are alleles? Okay, alleles are just those letters, like the big L, little l. They're the genes that you get from each parent. Okay, so each parent gives you an allele. Okay, so last question I have for you guys is if you cross, okay, let's see, if the genes in question 13 stood for if big B was black hair and small b was blonde hair, what color of hair would the kids have if you had two big B's crossed with big B, little b? Okay, this is kind of a unique situation we haven't seen so far. What would the kids look like? Are any of the kids going to have two little b's? Because remember, you need to have two little b's if you want to have blonde hair. Or are all the kids going to have black hair? Okay. I understand what you're saying, Maddie, because a lot of the way genes work in real life, it's not as simple as having either blonde or black. So we're kind of oversimplifying it here. So if we just assumed that it was dominant and recessive, which isn't really the way it works in real life, would you guys agree that all the kids would have black hair because they're all either going to be big B, or big B, little b, and so it's always going to be the big B is dominant over the little b, right? So they're all going to have black hair. All right? Okay. So we're getting close, guys. So let's just look at stuff relating to DNA and chromosomes. All right. I know, I can tell you guys are, you wanted to go for lunch, right? We're getting close. We're getting real close. All right. So just hold on the smileys just for a sec, guys, and we'll get through this, okay? All right, so DNA, you guys know DNA is like a computer program, right? Tiny little computer program, that little helix.
Goodbye.
All right, and it's found in every single cell in your body. So did you guys know that every single cell in your body contains a program that'll make you the way that you are? Isn't that cool? Every single cell in your body contains like that computer program that can tell your whole body to make all the different traits that you have. Very cool. So, of course, DNA programs are height, color of our hair, personality, all that kind of stuff. All right. So now one section of DNA is called a gene, right, or genetic material. So now when you put DNA in packages, that's the way it's found in the body. It's found in packages inside our cells. Those are called chromosomes. We have 46 chromosomes in the human cell, but they come in pairs, so we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. And the place the chromosomes are found is the nucleus of the cell. So we're just going to go on to the next page, and we're going to see how it all ties together. So here we go. Here's everything, how it ties together. So let's look at it. First of all, we've got DNA, good old helix thing, right? Can you imagine discovering that thing? That would have been cool. Now, one section of DNA is called a gene. So when you're talking about the gene that programs for whether you're going to have blonde hair or whatever, that's going to be one section of DNA, okay? Now, the whole DNA in the human body is put together in chromosomes. So this whole thing is one package. So it's got a whole bunch of DNA, right? And we have 46 chromosomes. And if you look here, you see all these chromosomes here. This represents 23 pairs of chromosomes, and they're found in the nucleus or the center of the cell. All right? So here's what it's showing. It's showing that genes are sections of the DNA molecule, little computer programs. You can see how a bunch of DNA is found in a package known as a chromosome. They're X-shaped in this picture here. And those X-shaped chromosomes are found in the nucleus of the cell. That's right. Ladies have two X, men have an X and a Y, right? All right. So, last page. I think we're on the last question, guys. Final question of the day. All right. So, final question of the day. $100 question. Let's see who can get it. Well, maybe not $100, but okay. Genetic material found in the body is called what? What's another name for genetic material? Chromosomes. Okay. Sorry, Brad, but I bet you know it. I bet you know it. It's another name for a gene. When you think of genes, what kind of substance are you thinking of in the human body? Are you thinking of genes? What do you call that stuff? Alleles? Cells? You guys are close. It's the helix-shaped thing. What is it? Genetic material is called DNA, right? Okay, that's what I was looking for, DNA. Dan, yeah. Okay, so what is a chromosome and where is it found? What is a chromosome and where is it found? $1,000 question now. We're up to $1,000. In your body. Okay, it's a gene package. It's a package of DNA, right? And where is it found specifically? Where is it found? Chromosomes. What part of the cell is it found in? It's found in the nucleus. Okay, what I'll do, Maddie, we'll just go through these questions. We'll just finish up the last one, and then we'll go back to the page before, okay? And how many chromosomes do humans have? 46, should be 46, right? And it's 23 pairs. You guys got it. And I'm just going to go back to the page before so Maddie can see. Okay, and that's how it's all fitting together. All right? Cool stuff. So guys, hey, I want to thank you for your participation. You guys have been really good. And so we're going to have a retest on this stuff soon. And so you guys can go over this video if you want to later on. All right? So I will let you guys go at this point. If you guys want to hang around on the board, you betcha. If you guys want to hang around on the board, you can do that. But I'm going to, we're just going to stop it at this point. And